What was I saying? In this video, I'll be diving into the technical, theoretical, and sympathetical process of making this artwork I made of the Space Nomad. Okay, first things first, I made this for a challenge called Chromacore. And basically, in Chromacore, there's a prompt for each day given in the Discord. And the prompt for this particular one is Celestial Nomad in their Wondrous Cloak. A little note, I streamed the process of making this artwork on Twitch, so that is why there's a fancy guy in the bottom right and stuff. That is Fancy Tyrion, and he's my character. Yeah. Before I begin most major art endeavors, I get references, and today I had some ideas of what I was going to do, so I just grabbed images related to the prompt, and then threw them in peer graph, including that of my artwork, The Dream Putter, which I made for last year's Chromacore. I was thinking I could redesign him or reinterpret it for this prompt, but I didn't end up doing that. A tip on picking references. When picking references, it is a good idea to pick two different kinds of references. Inspirational references, which won't likely affect the end result directly, but play a major role in helping ideate and curate the direction in which an artwork is going. The second kind of reference is technical reference. This is the stuff you actually want to add or maybe understand a bit better, like for example, hand reference photos. Since hands are a common struggling point for artists, I would suggest, in this case, finding images on sites like Google or Pinterest. I was literally struggling with hands yesterday. Okay, so one thing I'm noticing. So there's the knuckles. We have the knuckles right there. Still having trouble figuring out what this part right here. I think all we have left now to figure out is that hand pose. This one right here. It's still just blurriness. Okay, so from the side view, what would his hand look like? Do I have a reference of a side view like this? No. Yeah. Okay, I think right here this works. It might not be the most accurate and or pretty, but I think it works for what we're trying to do. You don't just want to copy and paste it in as art. You can just use it to figure out how to do what you actually want. If you need a very specific pose, you could also always use your own ref photos or just your own hand. You probably have hands, right? I start by just doing little rough idea sketches. With these, I'm being rough mostly on purpose because I don't need accurate characters just to see if I like the idea. This is a character design after all, and so ideating and figuring things out like this in the beginning is an important part of the process. Oh yeah, I tend to be very experimental, so I decided to try silhouette blocking, because why not? It's good for finding fun silhouette shapes. What I'm doing here is also a warm-up, so I'm just trying to get my hand going. I could have just done straight lines or spirals or something, but I made these instead. Okay, now on to the emotional and physical side of things. I was kind of struggling here. Even though I seem to be drawing characters like all the time, I struggle and question myself all the time. Like, do I even know how to draw characters? Is that even what that muscle looks like? This is completely off proportion. I don't even know how to draw a straight line anymore. Sad emoji. Was it 1 or 2 arms that people normally have? Yeah, not that last one, but still, this isn't easy. I was also struggling with other things. For example, this is my brain normally. Shows brain. Okay, now at the time I was making this, in the middle of July, temps were crazy, and so let's add a little bit of this, adds fire, and some of this, lava pouring out. These guys, screaming in pain, are my ideas, and as you can see, at the bottom, that bar right there, is the efficiency, and is at an all-time low. Now with that in mind, I continue to work on this artwork. I particularly liked one of the sketches I did, and decided to refine that. This is where I need to make it look a little better and figure the details out. As what seems to be standard for character design, I decided to make a second version of my character. A second idea. The first one is my original idea, which is some kind of silly little guy who travels collecting little trinkets through the universe. And maybe he is some kind of warrior as well, I don't know. I honestly didn't really think it through. The second idea is a nomad who travels the vast galaxies, taking anything of interest and value with him. He's a hoarder of the asteroids and celestial objects he gathers on his travels. Weighed down by his priceless trophies, his stride is slowed, and even his breath is heavy. It's a good idea to make at least a second idea to test to see whether or not the original idea is really what you want to finish. Now comparing our silly little dude to the intense hoarder, I went with the original idea. Our silly dude's is for the win. The other one I could have fixed, and it could have worked, but he would need a better pose and a backpack, which I didn't want to spend the effort of fixing. Yeah. Oh, and apparently, about right here, I looked into the space nomad's face, and I don't know if it was the heat or what, but his beautiful face would get me through this. So I kept it. Again, the temperature's effect on my brain. As you can see, I can't even spell. In fact, I misspelled the same word 2 times and only fixed one account of the misspelling. You see that pause? That is my melting little self realizing it's misspelled. I also happen to terribly misspell things when I'm sleepy. M-I-S-P-E-L-L. I tend not to do studies while in the middle of making an original artwork, but I guess I thought I needed to understand some nomad concepts a bit more before moving on. I mostly studied other artworks, and this can help even if my finished result ends up looking vastly different than my studies. Some of the good habits and stuff rub off on you if you study good art. Just don't plagiarize anything. At this point, I realized we had a space nomad, of sorts, but not exactly a celestial nomad that explores and travels the stars and galaxies. So I wanted him to look more spacey than just an astronaut. Hence, I added a crescent, double-bladed spear, the moon thing on his back. As I was drawing, did you notice I drew right over him with the line of the weapon? It's called drawing through, and it's useful because now I don't have to guess where the other side of the line comes out. If you're working traditionally, I would suggest either drawing a very light pencil line to do this, or hover your pencil over the paper and follow an imaginary line. A part I missed while recording the script for this video was all the time I spent doing cleanup and fixes to our Nomad Man. How could I forget this? You see, in any specific artwork, there are bound to be numerous problems and just areas that could do with some overall improvement. Does the leg look too stiff? The one in this drawing did. So, what can we do to fix that? Well, you could try angling it or rotating the leg or bending it. Does that fix the issue? If not, you can try something else. If you're really struggling, try looking up references. But trial and error is a pretty good strategy to be less dependent on references and more dependent on yourself as an artist. So I guess the best way to think about it is this. Try your hand at fixing it a few times, and then look up references if nothing else works. Don't think of it as a failure on your part, but as something you can improve on later with studying and practice. It's an improvement point, an opportunity for growth. Let's get back to the art. Here I am not just fixing the anatomy and stuff like that, but also things like, is it detailed enough? Or is it too much detail? Is it boring? Could I make it more interesting? How high could Ghost jump on the moon? What's my focal point? Another thing I did is fill him in with a solid color so I could check his silhouette. Main things you want to look for here is whether or not you can tell what's going on without any of the inner details, and if it looks cool with the shapes and stuff. Alright, we have done some ideating, sketching, and some variations. Now it's time for line art. I don't tend to like doing heavy, thick lines anymore because of the amount of time it takes. I tend to just use a thinner, cleaner sketch for my line art, which I like doing, and I like the look of a lot more. So same brush, just smaller and cleaner for my line art. Using this method, my sketching process tends to take longer than the cleanup line art process. I also use long controlled brush strokes with my entire arm, not just my wrist, to make sure my lines are nice and smooth. I start fixing any issues left in the sketch and detail things not yet detailed. I'll also do a bit of shading in the step too. Occasionally, if my lines are too messy, I will do another pass of line art. I don't tend to do this because of time constraints, but I will occasionally completely erase an area and redraw it if I want to make it cleaner. Major things I changed in this step is I wanted his cloak to be a bit more fantastical and wondrous, so we merged his cloak with the background. Admittedly, it could have worked out a bit better, but yeah, it just looks a little off. I don't think most people understood it, but yes, his cloak is the background, so his cloak is a wondrous galaxy cloak, making him even more of a celestial nomad. Okay, I have used many different methods to add color to my drawings in the past. But right now, my main method is the Enclose and Fill tool in Krita, which more or less automatically fills in the color using the line art as a guide. It's pretty accurate after you mess with the settings to fit your art. All you need is to close the gaps in your line art, which you can do with lines, or if you like the gaps in your line art, you can just fill in the gaps with color. After I do this, I sometimes fix up anything that the Enclose and Fill tool didn't color properly, which doesn't happen all the time, but does happen occasionally. In this case, it was his halo that didn't color properly. In these cases, I would just have to fix it manually, and after the base is built, all done, I will then individually add the colors, which takes a little bit of time, but having the base to build off is still incredibly useful. Lots of experimentation here with the way I did the textures. I have made space art, but not exactly like this. I heavily relied on my Splatterspush to get all those stars in. Little tip, for little glowy things, I like drawing them in as hard shapes and then duplicating the layer and then blurring the duplicate. When you do it that way, you can add all the hard shapes, and then when you blur it, all of them get the right glow shape, and then you can set whatever effect you want. So you could use addition or overlay or any other blending mode in order to fit what you're trying to do. For the colors I used, I don't know if I really thought about it, but it's a pretty common thing to just have black or white and then some strong color near the focus. I like orange, so I just used that, though it's kind of yellow here. The orange/yellow here is a pretty good contrast for the purpley blue everywhere else, so it still stands out. Now for the lighting, I wanted to have some hard light shapes, sort of like in a more anime or cartoony styles. So that's what I experimented with here. I think it worked out pretty well, though I don't know if I used the best shapes. And at some point, I realized the canvas was too wide for our space nomad, so I cut off the edges to better fit him. Adding the final effects. I think this step is one of the #1 things you can do to make your art look more finished and cinematic. All these bonus things do so much to make your art look better, and actually tend to be quite easy to do. Here's a few things that you could add. Alright, first and foremost, my favorite, glow effects. Like I explained with the stars, but you can actually just also use a airbrush tool and go over any bright areas you want to pop and just use like addition or overlay or something like that. And it'll just make it more glow. It's so nice. You can also add little bits of dust in the air with the Splatterspush. You could add additional lighting, so that could be a secondary light or even a rim light. With the rim light, you do want to be careful where you're putting it. So if your image is too bright, you won't even be able to add it all. So you need to have at least some sort of dark area, like the shadow side of the character, and put it there so that it stands out. And additionally, you also want to be very focused on shapes with the rim light. So like I was trying to do with the more primary light, with the rim light, you want to do that even more. And there are plenty of other ways that you could add even more pop, more interesting stuff. This is just a few. And to the final stuff at the end. So we have things like adjustments to the color and contrast. Everything like that happens here. Yep. I don't have much to say about it. Now I would just like to talk a little bit about the artwork. First things first, I'm quite happy with the way this came out, especially considering that I was tired and hot for the entire process of making this. Yeah, my good looks really drain my energy. Yeah, no. Like I said before, something that I could have improved would be his cloak clarity. Just the way that I did it, it just didn't work. Alright, love ya, and thank you for In this vid, I will be diving into the technical, theoretical, and synthetical process of making this artwork of the Space Nova. But wouldn't need a better pose and backbite. Would need excuse me. Oh, and apparently this is where I looked into his silly little beautiful face. And I don't know if it was the heat, but his beautiful space, his beautiful face, the face on his face, his beautiful face. You get me through this. So I kept it. Yeah. So stupid. As I was drawing, did you notice I drew right over him with the line of the weapon? It's called drawing through, and it's used. It's called drawing through, and it's useful because now I don't have to guess where the other side comes out. If working to just
They ask you how you are, you just have to.
if drawing hover over the picture. Okay, so I have used many different methods. Why is that one the most? Oh man. Ramen. Abadoo, take a do. These words are coming from that previous version of me, so let's see. I have made space art before, but not exactly like this. I heavily relied on my Huespatterspush to get all those stars in. For a tip, check up a glowy brush.